You guys are in for a treat. This is the best interview I've ever had. I mean, Tucker Max was great. Kute Blackson, mind-blowing. We dive into all of it. Life purpose, his story, how he got to where he is. I mean, we're talking about one of the most foremost thought leaders in the world of spirituality, self-development, self-evolution, transformation. I mean, this man is a phenom. You're gonna love every second of this conversation. I'm absolutely certain of it. And so do yourself a favor. If there's anything that's gonna be distracting you for the next, I don't know, hour or so as this goes on, pause this, come back to it and watch it when you got the time. But if you have the time, sit through the whole thing. Absolutely transformative. Kute Blackson. India, 36 times.
36, maybe more.
Maybe more. You have lost count.
Yeah, I've lost count.
How old were you when you started going?
You know, I think the first time I was 21.
Okay.
And I was living in LA. I reached a point in my life where I was trying to do a TV show. And I wanted to be the next Oprah. And I was like literally pitching everyone and everybody. I pitched the head of CAA, William, I mean, you name it, I pitched everybody. And I reached the point where I was offered a show. I met these top managers. They represented Michael Jackson, Mariah Carey, DiCaprio. They said, we're gonna make you famous. I went home that night and everything I do has to feel like in alignment. So I went home and I meditated. And the answer and the vibration that I got was no, do not sign with these guys. My mind and my logic was like, you're crazy. This is the thing you've been working for 3 years.
Right.
But my soul was like, no. And I have learned in my life that when I don't listen to my soul, things don't flow. When I listen to my soul, somehow I always end up in the right place at the right time with the right thing, with the right people, even though the route that I take may not be the one that I most expect. So I said, okay, I don't want to follow what I'm being guided to, but this is the thing, this impulse has guided me my whole life. So it's a no. These guys chewed me out. I went into a bit of a depression because I felt like I don't understand what I'm supposed to do with my life. I thought it was this and now it's not this. And so I give up. And I was driving on the freeway to San Diego. And I said, God, universe, you got to provide me some answers. Like, what do I need to do? Like speak to me.
Yes,
right? You got to be careful when you ask that question.
Yeah.
Because I heard an answer that I didn't want. First, I heard, go and walk the Camino. It's a 900-kilometer trek in northern Spain.
Wow.
St. Francis, Dante, Chaucer. It's on a vortex line, kind of like Sedona, but 900 kilometers on this vortex line. So I heard this voice that said, go walk the Camino. And I thought, well, God, that's not exactly what I want to hear. But it felt so strong, so we can get to that. But I went to walk the Camino.
Okay.
On the Camino, I met someone that said, if you really want to find out who you really are, go to India. That's where you will find your answers. All the great mystics and sages and monks and Maharishi and Yogananda, Ramakrishna. India's the place. Yeah. India's the land. So I came back to the US, still a bit depressed, and I packed my bags. I broke up with my girlfriend. I didn't renew my lease. I shaved my head. I took $1,000 and I said, I am not coming back to America until I find answers for myself. I'm tired of reading the books. I'm tired of what Deepak has to say and Tony Robbins has to say and Jim Rohn has to say. I love them. They're amazing. They've impacted my life. But I want to know, not what Gandhi and Martin Luther King, what's my truth? And so I packed my bags. I'm not coming back. And ended up in Delhi. And that's what took me to India, basically in search of answers. I wanted to know, like, why am I here? Who am I? What's my purpose? What am I supposed to do with my life? And what's the true nature of happiness? You know, for me, so much of happiness tends to be dependent on the achievement of goals and objective experience. And I thought, how is it that some people who have nothing or every reason to not be happy, how is it that they seem to be peaceful and happy? And how is it that some people who seem to have everything are miserable? And so I went to India in search of those answers. And I went far and wide. I went to meet with every guru, every mystic. I went to the forest with, you know, this Guruji and that Guruji, and this person giving me a blessing. And I went to the Himalayas, almost died in the Himalayas.
How?
I went to the Himalayas because I wanted to go to the source of the Ganges in Gangotri and Gamuk.
Okay.
Because they said, if you go there, like something happens. So I went there with some expectation. So I literally arrived at the base of the Ganges, and I started feeling sick. And I thought, oh shit, this is that sort of Delhi belly. This is that kind of thing. Maybe
Was it hypoxia maybe? Like,
yeah, maybe I've got like malaria. So I started climbing this mountain. And it was a really profound moment because as I started climbing this mountain for the entire day, I was vomiting. I had diarrhea. I was shitting and vomiting stuff I didn't even know was possible.
Yeah.
I started literally hallucinating. And this put me in a sort of trance of reflecting on my life in terms of my parents and my life and why I was born. And I started saying goodbye to my mom. I started saying goodbye to, literally I thought I was dying, crawling up this mountain. The next day, literally, they have a whole encampment at the top where you reach the top. So I slept overnight and I woke up and I thought, wow, I'm still awake. Okay, this is a good sign. Called a donkey down. And then I was told you had altitude sickness. I'm like, altitude sickness.
That's
I'm
exactly.
like, that was it. Yeah. I literally thought I was going through some shamanic experience, but
you were.
I was on one level.
Yeah.
And so in many ways, India has been my mother that has birthed me. India has, I say, she has eaten me up, cracked me open, spat me out, birthed me anew in many ways. And what I found for myself was India is not just a physical geography. There's the India that you see, which is the temples and the mountains and the physical, New Delhi and Mumbai. But for me, the real India is a frequency, is a consciousness, is a vibration, is a state of being that I found that when I spent time in India, just step by step, she began to reveal herself to me and blessed me in many ways. And I found that it was like India knows exactly where you are holding on to control. And if you're open and you're available, the frequency that is India will find those places inside of you that are resisting opening, resisting awakening, resisting freedom, resisting the divine, resisting surrendering, and just crack you open. And that's what, for me, India did day in, day out, over and over again.
This is at 21.
At 21. That's where it began. That's where it started. No, 22.
22. Okay. This is incredible to me. I had the beginning of waking up around in my early 20s too. Voice, crazy, 3 days. Just I thought I was going crazy. Ended up in the psychiatric ward. Because it was intense, and I didn't understand what the hell was going on, right? Neither did my family. Everyone was just like, dude, this guy, you're gonna get him in the hospital, right? Like, it's bad. But it was all good. Like, everything that was happening was good. It was my early 20s as well, but, once that ended, I'm like, okay, well, now what? Now what? Right? I don't know what the hell I'm doing, and I don't know what is what anymore, right? Because at that point, there's more, but there's not enough, but you're given no real answers, right? It's like, hey, it's like there's a great mystery. Now you're in on it, but we're not telling you else because it's a mystery. So you gotta go through it, dude. We don't give you nothing. We're gonna give you enough understanding to know that you're in a mystery, to know that there's more, to know that this thing is not just this big random things happening without any meaning. Everything has meaning. Everything is trying to point you in a direction and point you to the thing. From the songs that play on the radio to the billboards you take notice of to the people you link eyes with, everything is pointing you towards that, right? I've always felt that to get to this point, one of a few things have to happen. You either go through a traumatic, really traumatic, almost like you get shattered open, which I think was probably what happened to me. I was going through some things with people. I grew up in a rough spot. There was all kinds of craziness going on around in my life. So I believe that was it. The other thing is you have gotten yourself out of survival, right? And now you've given yourself the time to be able to pursue higher pursuits, right? To look at what are we here for? What's going on, right? And so I always thought, like, you either have to get cracked open or you have to have this ability to, and typically that comes from being financially free, taking care of all of the, basic survival needs. And now I have the time to say, okay, now what, right? But here you are telling me at 21 years old, you only have $1,000 to your name. You've given away the opportunity to be rich and famous, right? Like, and because I had a very similar kind of drive, right? I'm like, I feel like I'm here for more. I want it to be more. That's why I came to Los Angeles to be a comedian, was because I wanted to pursue being known. I wanted to pursue achievement. I wanted to pursue fame. I wanted to pursue riches. I wanted it all, right? And in that pursuit, you kind of go on a path and you start to see what it is. But, I don't think I would have turned down at 21 years old with all of the things that you had inside of you to be able to follow the soul, right? How did you learn that at that age?
I think it felt like I didn't have a choice.
Okay.
It felt like.
But you did.
On one level I did,
Yeah.
but I think on one level, the soul, which is the real essence of what we are, it doesn't care about your agenda. The soul has its own agenda. The soul doesn't care about convenience. The soul doesn't care about comfort. The soul cares about evolution. And I feel as though we are all souls that we've incarnated into this human experience, in order to learn, to grow, to evolve. This human experience is kind of like a classroom, a university for our soul's evolution. And I think that the real purpose of incarnation is growth, is evolution, to realize who we really are, to remember our true nature, and to learn lessons. And I think the only thing that we take with us is
those things,
is the evolution of our consciousness. So as you mentioned, everything is serving our growth and evolution. For me, I grew up, just for a bit of context, I grew up in a bit of a spiritual environment. In that,
lay that out for me.
Yeah,
if you would.
in that, like my first memories as a young boy, I remember being around age 6, age 7. At this time, we'd moved to London, right? So I was born in Ghana, father's from Ghana, mother's Japanese, grew up in London, moved to London when I was 3. My first memories around age 5, age 6 was seeing a crippled woman. All of this I thought was normal, by the way. A crippled woman crawling on the floor. She picks up the sand, the gravel that this man walked on, wipes it on her face and stands up. And so, week after week, I grew up seeing these miracles, blind people seeing, deaf people hearing. A person would come in a wheelchair, and the same man whose gravel she picked up would look at this person in a wheelchair, like right in front of me, and say, "Hey, why are you in this wheelchair? You're not sick. Stand up." Like, "But I haven't walked in 10 years. "Yeah, but do you believe?" "Yeah, so why the hell are you sitting down? Stand up." Person would stand up. Somebody would come in with crutches. Hadn't walked in 5 years. Throw your crutches away. So this man was my father. And my father...
That's your dad.
My dad.
Your dad.
My dad, my real blood dad. And so shit I saw with my own eyes every day. No cameras, no YouTube, no shenanigans, just me, people around.
Yeah, and he's not doing this for so people know him. He's a truly, he's a master.
Some called him the miracle man of Africa.
Okay.
I call him an African sort of Siddha.
Yeah.
Siddha yogi.
Yep.
Because he went to India in the 60s and early 70s and had an awakening experience. And so he just had these 300 churches that he kept and had a huge church in London. So his whole philosophy was very spiritual, mystical in nature, and became less and less, more and more metaphysical and less dogmatic and religious.
Right.
So by the time I was born, miracles were still happening. And I think the blessing was I grew up thinking this was like normal. It wasn't anything special. I thought everyone had this experience. I would talk to my friends about it. So I grew up with the sense of possibility. I grew up with a sense that there weren't limitation, that we're not just limited to this physical body. And that was a huge blessing. So age 8, I started speaking in my father's churches. He threw me in the audience one Sunday in London, 4,000 people, and said, "Speak." I don't know what happened, but words started coming out of my mouth, and this little chubby kid that I was started speaking.
Yeah.
That began my speaking career. Age 14, I was ordained as a minister. And all of a sudden, my father, who was this sort of iconic African patriarchal guy, says, "My son is taking over my ministry. He's my successor." And I look around, I'm like, nobody discussed this shit with me. But at 14, there was, again, you talk about that knowing. There was a profound knowing inside of me that something was not aligned. That same knowing I had when I was 22, right? Something was not quite resonating. I knew, if I'm honest, that was not my path. The church was not my path. But I was too afraid to speak my truth. My fear was,
God, that's so much pressure.
in front of 4,000 people, it's announced, and hundreds of thousands of people in Ghana are getting excited. The pressure. So I think, like many of us, I allowed fear to hijack my voice and my freedom. And for 4 years, so I got ordained at 14, a whole ceremony. I have pictures of it and everything. It was a big deal. I was the guy. And I tried to fit myself into a box of what I thought I needed to be, of who I thought I needed to be in order for my dad to love me, for people to love me, and I became miserable in the process. And so by the time I turned 18, and during this time, I would sneak into my father's office, and he had literally 1,000 books of, spiritual, Krishnamurti and Osho and Wayne Dyer. So I literally started devouring these books, just trying to understand, like, who the hell am I? What's the purpose of life? And where do we come from? And where do we go? And what's the meaning of all of this? And what am I supposed to do with my life? Because something doesn't feel right. So I read Krishnamurti's book. And if you know anything about Krishnamurti, he was deemed the successor to the Theosophists, right? And he was being groomed. And when I read his book, it was like a light bulb went off. Because I could so relate to his life, because when he was 28, he left everything. He left. And when I read that, I knew, I was around 16, I thought, oh shit. I knew this is what I had to do, which was leave. So it took me 2 years to do more reading, do more praying, do more meditating,
Dude,
do more
did
grieving.
You do it? What did you say?
When I turned 18, I chose not to go to university. Because at this point, all of the authors I read about, Wayne Dyer, Chopra, Tony Robbins, Jim Rohn, Mark Victor Hansen, Jack Canfield, my icons, my heroes as a teenager, they lived in LA. They lived in San Diego. They lived in Southern California, Marianne Williamson. So I wanted to come and meet these people and learn from these people. I thought, I want to go into this field. I had dreams of, I would sneak into my father's church in the middle of the night and speak to the empty chairs with the lights off, imagining I was speaking to thousands of people. So I felt this calling in my life. So when I turned 18, my soul, the same thing when I was 23, right, 24, my soul is nudging, said, it's time to leave. It's time to go to America. Go to America. And I chose to listen to my soul. And it had taken me 4 years to grieve. And I had to make peace with the fact that I may never have a relationship with my father. I had to go through the process of setting my father free, grieving that relationship, and making peace with, he may never speak to me again. So I finally got to that point, and I looked into my future, and I saw that I could take over my father's church. I could take the expected path, and I probably would be very successful. But when I projected into age 30, age 40, age 50, age 60, age 70, I saw that if I didn't have my soul, if I didn't have my true integrity, what kind of success is that? And the pain, like if I was honest, the pain I felt from not following my truth, that's what moved me. It felt like a death. And so I knew what I had to do. And that was have a conversation with my father. My father is an old school African guy.
Yeah, I'm scared just hearing you say
Bro,
it, right?
It's kind of
I'm
like his way. It's like my way or my way, you choose.
I mean, I don't know your dad, but I'm
old school.
school.
So I told my mother's this beautiful Japanese woman. I said, Mom, I don't want to take over my father's church. She says, okay, my mother's amazing, the best thing in my life. And she said, I will support you no matter what, so long as you're following your soul. I said, okay. I walked up to my father's bedroom, tiptoed. Some people say, like, you have to be fearless and get rid of fear. I was freaking terrified. Some people say when you know what your purpose is in life, the unicorns, meet you and everything unfolds. And it's like sometimes when you follow your purpose, that's when the real tests begin. That's when the real challenges begin. And that's when many people turn back, because when faced with those challenges, they think that they're on the wrong path.
Exactly.
But you're actually on the right path. It's like life is actually preparing you. The tests that you have to go through are sort of the spiritual gymnasium for you to lift the weight to become the person that's capable of fulfilling the dream and vision that your soul has given you. And so I always tell people, if you're going through a difficult moment, it's an opportunity for you to grow and evolve and find out who you really are. Mm-hmm. And so in that moment, I tiptoed up the steps to my father. He was sleeping. I wake him up and I said, Dad, I'm I don't want to take over your church. He woke up. He's like, are you sure? And the second question was the real test. And I said, I realized I was at a choice point. I said, yeah, and I went downstairs. And many people think, oh, you must have been so relieved. You must have been so happy. I cried for days because I felt like I shattered my father's heart.
Yeah.
And I knew the consequence. My father and I, we didn't speak for 2 years. 2 years. My heart was fucking broken. We didn't speak for 2 years. And here I am, 17 and a half years old, sitting in my room, no college degree, no money, mother support. I'm kind of an outcast. And I say a prayer. I say, universe, if any of this metaphysical, spiritual stuff works, your thoughts create your reality, your intention, if any of this stuff works, I need to know now that I am on the right path. And I think the universe will often give you signs, but most of us, we're not paying attention to the signs because sometimes we just want to hear what we want to hear. And so within about 7 days, I was still in school, high school, college, it's called in London, doing my A-levels. I'm in the library. I'm sitting there kind of like praying for help. Someone hands me a magazine called The Economist. I never read The Economist, but I'm like, okay, well, what's this? I look through the back of this magazine. It says the American government is giving away 55,000 green cards in the green card lottery. I felt chills in my body. A green card lottery. 55,000 green cards given away every year in a green card, DV1 green card lottery. Enter it. That same voice says, enter it. That same nudging. I enter it. I felt I was going to win. So this was April. I was told that unless you heard back by September the 18th, if you don't hear back by September the 18th, you lost, move on.
Yeah.
So every day I'm visualizing, I'm affirming, I'm practicing all the spiritual law of attraction stuff, seeing myself in America. I have a map. This was before the internet, so I have a map and I'm kind of Wilshire Boulevard, Olympic, getting a sense of LA, visualizing the President of the United States greeting me at the airport. Didn't know he wouldn't, I'm kind of innocent, thinking he's going to be happy to see me.
Cute's coming and we got it. We're going to be right there.
I'm kind of, I thought that's how it was going to go down.
I love
but
it.
I cut out a piece of paper, colored it green, wrote my name on it, put green card. Didn't know green cards were pink at the time. But I'm visualizing, bro. I'm like working all the metaphysical, spiritual, universe, energy stuff. Every day I go to the mailbox, there's nothing. Nothing. September the 18th, nothing. I'm pissed off, I'm mad. I say to my mother, I'm going to America. She said, well, how do you go without a green card? I'm like, I'm going. I feel it so strong that I'm going. I mean, it's illegal, but I'm going and I'm not coming back. That night, we get a phone call. It's the law firm that I applied through in Washington. Says, is this Mr. Blackson? I said, yes. He says, we just got notification today that you've won a green card. It came in the mail. And I'm jumping around, hugging my mom, celebrating. And I heard the same voice that's been guiding me my whole life that said, why do you seem so surprised? You knew you were going to win. You knew. And so I think that there's a part of us at that deepest level that knows everything. If at that deepest level, we are everything, but often we don't listen, And so for me, life has been a process of trusting that knowing, even if it seemed crazy, even if it didn't make sense, even if I had no idea where to go, I've just endeavored to do my best to trust that knowing and allow it to guide me. So that's what brought me to the States. And then I went and found many of these teachers and mentors and studied with some of them, and then got on this path of wanting to do this TV show, and then ended up in India.
Okay, so I love it. This is like I feel like I'm in a movie right now, and I get to pick what part of the movie we're going to be at next. So I understand now how you get to the United States.
Yeah.
I understand now how you get to India, and now even more so, the decision to leave the TV show is even heavier.
Yeah.
Because you've had to, relinquish a relationship with your father. You have an opportunity at success. So if you take the TV show,
it's big.
Dad gets to look and say, you know what? He knew what was up. He followed his spirit. Now look at him. He's got the show. It could have been your redemption moment there.
For sure.
Right? It could have made mom be like, yeah, my son, he always knows. Like there could have been all of these little things if you had just let that box get checked there. But you knew it wasn't aligned for you at the moment, right? That you had another path that you needed to take to get there. So India, searching for answers. What were some of the answers? If you can share.
Yeah, I traveled around India in search for answers. I kind of got to the place where I felt like I reached the end of my ego's capacity to make shit happen. Because I had tried for 2.5 years to make this TV show happen. Like, I mean, I tracked down everyone in Hollywood has met me at 21 years old. Steven Spielberg, I got to track him down in a freaking park. Arnold Milchan, tracked him down in a freaking gymnasium. You name it, like you mention my name and they'll probably reference, oh, there was a kid that. So I felt like I had tried everything and it kind of didn't get me where I thought I wanted to be.
Yeah.
And so I reached a point when I got to India where I threw my hands up and I said to life, I've tried it my way. And something hasn't worked. So I surrender. Like, show me what I am here to do. There's what I thought I'm here to do, but you show me what my purpose is and what is it that life wants to express through me. I'm available. I am available to be used. For me, that was the turning point in my life. So often we're taught, like, you got to know what you want. Get clear on your goals. I mean, nothing wrong with that. But I think that that's sort of an ego-based model of creating life.
Yeah, right.
And you might achieve everything you thought you wanted, only to realize that what you thought you wanted is not what you really wanted. It's just what you thought you wanted based on who you thought you were. And you can create a good life that way, but it will often be limited because the ego is conditioned by past experience, so it's not able to see the total unfolding of your soul's highest destiny.
Right.
So the shift happened when I was in India, walking on trains, walking in by the Ganges, walking up mountains, saying, universe, like, show me what it is that you want to express through me. And when I sort of invoked that intention, I went through experience after experience after experience. There came a point where I was sort of exhausted with my India journey.
Now, are these like mystical, spiritual experiences?
There was a few. I'm happy to share them with you.
Yeah.
And there's one, like one of the first powerful experiences happened when I was in Bodh Gaya. Bodh Gaya is where the Bodhi tree is, where the Buddha got enlightened.
Yeah.
So I'm like, let me go there because surely some monk is going to have an answer for me.
Yeah.
And I met with all these enlightened monks and mystics, and I didn't get my answer. Like, I thought it was going to come in this big enlightened explosion. So one day it was 120 degrees. I'm sitting outside the temple. And I see these 10 beggars lined up. And they're all begging. And there's this one guy, he's sitting on the floor. And I see that he's the only beggar sitting down on the floor, cross-legged, and he's singing. Like, with his tablas, he's singing some praise to the universe. I'm like, wow, caught my attention. But I was so exhausted, I sat there and I watched him for like an hour. And he is singing at the top of his lungs, like you thought he was in a concert with a 50,000, like truly, true devotion. And as I watched him, I was so moved. And when I looked at him closely, I realized he was blind. I'm like, this dude is singing, he's blind. He can't see if anyone is watching. He can't see how much money he's really getting. He can't see nothing, but he's singing. Then when I looked more closely, Jamil, I saw that he was beating these tablas, his arms were deformed. I'm like, this guy has no freaking arms, can't go to the toilet by himself, can't eat by himself, and he is singing praises to the divine. Then when I looked more closely, the dude had no legs. His legs were deformed. So no eyes, no arms, no legs, and singing like full gratitude, devotional to the divine in such a way that moved you that I thought, wow, I started crying. And when I looked at this guy, tears were flowing down my face. I got a translator. I went up to this guy and I said, how in that moment I realized I was the beggar. This guy wasn't the beggar. This was the richest man in the world, because despite his situation, despite his circumstance, despite the karma he was dealt with his life, he was free. He wasn't letting his situation determine his inner state of being.
Yeah.
And it was so real because I realized I'd seen him every day for the last like 2 weeks and I hadn't paid attention, but he was doing the same thing, singing in the sweltering heat. So I realized, wow, this man is truly wealthy. And here I am. I'm healthy. I'm happy. I have a physical body. I have so much talent. And here I am just miserable. So I went up to this guy and I said to him through a translator, like, how is it that every day you come out here and you sing and you give your gift to the world? How is it? Here I am, a friend doesn't call me back, I'm pissed off. You know, I don't make what I think I should make, I hold my gifts back. I mean, this guy doesn't even know how much money he's making, right? And I looked at him and said, how is it that you give your gifts every day? And he looks at me through the translator and he says, again, I'm expecting some grand mystical secret. He says, what else is there to do? And I was like, come again? He goes, what else is there to do? Sometimes, and this was the translation I got, sometimes life will give you what you want. Sometimes life will not give you what you want. But you can always show up and give life who you are. And he kept singing. And that was a huge turning moment for me. When I realized that we always have the capacity to share and give our gifts. And it's only when we are serving in service to humanity, in service to people, sharing our gifts, no matter what our gifts are, even if it's a smile. Sometimes I don't have great wealth, I don't have much real estate. Yeah, but we have a smile, we have a moment of kindness, maybe it's a phone call. We can always give. And so my life shifted in that moment in a profound, I knew it intellectually, but something about seeing this guy shifted something inside of me.
You experienced it. You felt it.
I felt right there, man. Yeah. I felt it. I felt the transmission of this man's conviction reaching and speaking to my soul. And that's when I knew that part of my life was really meant to be in devotion and service to humanity in some way. And that was a beginning. You know, I had many experiences. I was in Rishikesh by the Himalayas, and I'd run up and down the Himalayas basically I was in Rishikesh for a month, and I'd run up and down the Himalayas, and then I'd jump in the ocean, in the Ganges, and then meditate. This was my morning ritual for like 30 days. And one day I had this experience, like no hallucination, nothing, no hallucinogenics, nothing. Yeah. Here I am just overlooking the Ganges, and I remember I was watching the river, and the waves were flowing into each other. And I had this sort of transcendental experience where we are all one consciousness, like the river of life, flowing from the same source. It said in the Ganges, this is why I wanted to go to the source of the Ganges, because they say that the Ganges comes from one drop and becomes this whole huge, magnificent river. And so I felt as though I had this experience that as a humanity, we are all one consciousness. We are all one river, flowing from the same source. The consciousness that is manifesting as a multiplicity of form, as one stream of, humanity. And we think that we're separate waves in the ocean. But when I looked at the ocean, one wave is crashing into another wave. And where does one wave begin and where does one wave end?
Right.
And it was as though, is this wave over here separate from that wave? But it happened like in an instant. And it was like in an instant, I felt in my body the inherent oneness of all existence. Mm-hmm. And it was as though my sense of separate ego self dissolved and it was like an illusion, and the only thing that was present for me was, and it's hard to explain, mm-hmm. but the experience for me was such a deep sense of love. Like love is the recognition of the inherent oneness of being. And there was such a deep love that was present for all humanity that I cried, it was like tears. And that altered me. And so there were experiences after experiences after experiences in India that just cracked me open. And at the end of my 3 to 4 months in India, of traveling from north to south, plane, trains, you name it, almost dying several times, I was guided to go back to America. And because what happened for me was I gave up. When I arrived, I said, I gave up any sense of what I thought I needed to be. So I said, God, I don't know what I need to be in my life. If my true dharma and destiny is to clean the streets, and that is what I'm put here on the planet to do, I surrender. All I ask is that you show me. I want to be used. And so when I went through this whole 3-4 months and I got a sense of clarity, not the whole picture. Sometimes the universe doesn't show you the whole picture, because if we knew the whole picture, we may not step through and take the actions necessary.
Right.
You know? And so I was guided to come back to
And
the
also,
US.
that's not fun.
Yeah, it's not fun. It removes the mystery, you know?
Yeah.
And so I came back to the US and I just showed up. And that's when 20-ish years ago, my work began. I arrived back, had nothing, no girlfriend, no money, no nothing. I just felt free. And there was a level of freedom that I had that for the first time wasn't dependent on any objective experience. And that level of freedom was so profound, you know, that I couldn't describe it. And friends and people started coming up to me, like, Kou, what the hell happened to you? Like, you seemed happy, you seemed free. And just started talking with people. And one person showed up, next person showed up. Next thing you know, someone said, can you coach me? And I was like, sure, why not? I had no idea what I was doing. And then my work just kind of evolved and evolved and evolved. And more people showed up. And I started to, let's say, create my own methodology and way of working with people. I call it uncoaching.
Yep.
And it just grew from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it really is uncoaching, because we need to unlearn.
Yeah.
We need to unlearn all of the things that society, our teachers, our parents, our experiences, our limits, all of the things that have given us this sense that we are not enough, or that we are not really anything divine, or that we are separate from the entire experience. And it comes from the sense of, at least for me, it came from this sense of safety, right? It's like, listen, the reason why we have this, the reason why we limit ourselves, the reason why we need to, make sure that we fit ourselves into this little box is because it's really painful when we don't get what we want. It's really painful when we don't see the world unfold the way that we hoped it would. And that dream or that thing not happening is probably one of all the things that adults, they feel that, right? They're like, man, life doesn't go your way, so I'm going to teach you from a young age to know that.
Yeah. Sometimes not. What I found for myself is sometimes your dreams not manifesting is grace.
Yeah.
And your dreams not manifesting is a blessing. We're just not always able to see that in a moment,
right,
in a particular moment, because when we're locked into our own ego, our perceived sense of what we believe ourselves to be, the ego is not able to see the whole picture. It can only see a small sliver of the perspective of life.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're in the world of uncoaching.
Yeah.
And, you've done a phenomenal job. You're an author.
Yes.
And I had the privilege of diving into You.Are.The.One. And I want to talk about that a little bit, because it's real, right? And for you in that moment when you're in the Ganges and you're seeing the waves become each other, and seeing the inherent and feeling the inherent oneness of all of it, you have that understanding that it's me.
Yeah.
It's all me. And not in a way of like, I'm God, but in a way of like, we are God.
Yeah.
We are all a piece of it. And it's coming through and living and knowing itself through us.
Yeah.
And through even the minerals and the mountains and the animals and all of it. It's just, it's enjoying itself and learning itself and watching itself and seeing itself and expressing itself through us, and giving us this gift of allowing us to evolve and grow and change, and really doing it without judgment. And I think one of the hardest things for us as people is that we especially because of, I think, dogma, we have this idea in our brain of this, sky dad who's really jealous and really angry and really punitive and loves fire, and wants to, for whatever reason, wants to burn you. He makes you for eternity. He makes you away, right? Gives you a nature, gives you polarity, gives you the ability to understand goodness, and gives you to understand the ability to understand what's not, and puts it all out there, makes you in its image, and then says, by the way, mess up,
you're screwed.
I'm gonna burn you. Right? So, and in fact, I think that in itself is a comedy.
Yeah.
Right? I think that in itself is a comedy, because it's like when you get to see that and you look at it maybe from 10,000 feet and you're like, how could we justify that? How could, and then now, how can we kill each other over that? And how can we put ourselves on these pedestals of superiority just based off of these ideas that I'm better than you?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And it's really difficult. And I was actually talking to my sister about it earlier today, because, you know, even in our own culture, right? There's these myths that, and they almost whisper it to each other. Hey, we're the chosen ones. Really, we're the ones. Everybody else, we're the ones. And I think that might come from the fact that so many of us don't do anything in our lives. We don't create anything or do anything that we feel proud of, and we're not living our dharma. We're not living our purpose. And when you do sell out, or when you do conform, or when you do let limit and fear and scarcity and all those things become your driver, and that becomes your identity, now you don't get to have the impact. Now you don't get to do the thing. Now you don't get to live the purpose that you were here to do. You didn't follow your soul. So how do I feel special? How do I feel good? How do I make myself now feel like I'm something? Yeah. Oh, I'm going to fold into this group. I'm going to become this group that has this sense of superiority, and this is where I'm going to find it. And this is where I'm going to feel it. How do you deal with that in people? Because I'm sure as a uncoach, there's so many layers of misinformation and misguidance that comes from that.
You know, I think we are all special and none of us are special.
Oh, yeah.
We are all meaningful and mean nothing.
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of things. You know, as children, as souls, we incarnate into this human experience and we're born free. I think we incarnate and we are in touch with the divine nature of what we are. We incarnate, and like you look into a child's eyes, like that divine spark is alive. Like there's a knowing, there's an aliveness. And I think that's why when we look into a baby, especially like a newborn, we melt, because we're reminded of the nature of what we are that we just forgot. And so as human beings, we go through this process of forgetting. You know, even a child feels it's one with the mother, right? And so as children, we are free. We are everything. We are divine. There's an intuitive knowing in a child of like the truth of their being, right? And I think, so what happens is we incarnate into this human experience and we meet our parents. And God bless them, you know, our parents, they're just doing the best that they know how to do based on their parents and their upbringing and their grandparents and their traumas and their hurts. And so the process of conditioning starts, which then facilitates this sense of feeling separate. And so we meet our parents, and maybe dad is crazy. Maybe mom is an alcoholic. Maybe they're fighting all the time. Maybe there's pain, trauma, hurt, abuse, some kind of dysfunction. Maybe they're great people, but they just didn't know how to meet our emotional needs. And that was painful. So two things happen where we start losing touch with our true nature. The first thing is we learn all sorts of strategies to shut down, disconnect, and not feel what's going on around. It's too painful to feel that dad is crazy. It's too painful to feel that mom and dad are fighting. It's too painful to feel that my needs aren't being met. So we start to disconnect and suppress. We erect walls around our nature, around our heart, and then we suppress. Oh, I don't care. Doesn't mean anything. Suppress pain. Before you know it, decades go by and layers and layers and layers of unfelt, unprocessed feelings build up, kind of covering up our true light, our connection to our own inner divinity. And then we go into the world as young children in terms of the conditioning process, and we look around and we become who we think mom and dad want us to be. We become who we think the world wants us to be. So we start developing a a role, a mask,
A character.
a character,
Yeah.
a persona, that we avoid pain, and now we contort ourselves to become this version of ourselves that we think we need to be in order for mom and dad to love us and the world to love us, that gets reinforced by school, education, religion, parents, teachers, and everyone around us. So now we've become conditioned to contort to become this version of ourselves that we actually believe that the version of ourselves that we have become is who we really are.
Yeah.
And the more tightly we hold on to this version of ourselves, the more conditioned we are, the more in ego we are, the more restricted we are, the less free we are, the less connected we are to the inherent oneness, the true source of our being. Because now we've become so fixated on a focal point of meanness, but the version of ourselves that we become is not what we really are. It's just a conditioned set of patterns that we are identifying with. That is ego. Ego is a sense of what we believe ourselves to be that we identify with. Ego is not a thing, it's a process. But the more we are identified with ourselves as ego, the labels, I'm a nice person, I'm a good person, I'm a spiritual person, I'm a this person, I'm a CEO, I'm a that, I'm the chosen one and you're not, right? I'm better, I'm worse. All of that, I'm special, you're not. All of these labels that we've learned to identify with create separation. And so
from ourselves and from each other.
From ourselves, from our true nature, and from each other, right? And so the degree to which we're conditioned is the degree to which we're not free. The degree to which we're identified with our sense of self as ego is the degree to which I feel myself separate from you, right? And so the challenge is the ego is kind of sneaky. The ego's job is to reinforce its existence, and the ego's job is to protect you from getting hurt. And that's why often it's a bit hard or difficult to let go, to surrender, to truly let go and surrender yourself and open to the oneness, because to truly surrender and open feels like, to the perceived sense of what we believe ourselves to be, the ego feels like a death.
Right.
And so the ego resists surrendering. The ego resists letting go of control. The ego resists oneness, because if I really open to oneness, then who will I be? And so specialness becomes the ego's way of reinforcing itself to keep a sense of identity and separation and false sense of existence. But when we can realize that the ego, the beliefs, the patterns, the stories that we made up, the labels, the I'm this, I'm that, I'm this, I'm not this, are just patterns and labels that we hold on to. The ego is not a thing. The ego is a process of identifying. Like a bicycle is a thing, a couch is a thing. So a bicycle is a thing, but the pedaling is a process.
Right.
And so the identifying with my sense of self as this label and that label and this label, that is the ego. And so when we can realize, oh, I am not those labels, I am not this version of myself, I'm not the story, then we can shift our relationship with our ego and realize, by letting go of being special, by letting go of feeling superior, it's not that I am dying. It's just the illusory perception of what I believe myself to be is dying. It's not that I am dying, because what I really am, which is the oneness, cannot die.
Right.
You know, and I think so much of, here's the thing, it's not easy because we're born into a three-dimensional matrix of reality where so much of the world as we know it, religion, advertisers, media, retailers, social media, have no interest in you being free, have no interest in you knowing who you really are.
And it's kind of always been that way.
It's always been, because
that is the human game.
So much, even like politics, advertising, you know, switch on the television, is all about reinforcing your sense of ego self, reinforcing your sense of specialness, because if you're special, then you buy this car.
Yeah.
If you're the special people wear this underwear, the special people wear these sneakers. That, you know, and so much of society and life is conditioning us, unless we become awake and aware and conscious, is conditioning us to go to sleep, to believe in the illusions, and it's reinforcing the ego sense of self, because by reinforcing the ego sense of self and by us believing it, we can be controlled and we can be manipulated and we live in fear.
Right.
And so I think part of the game of life is to really wake up from that trance, you know?
And your uncoaching is the process. I mean, there's a meditation style called neti neti. I'm sure you've done that, or maybe
Heard of it,
but
yes.
it's very much about what you
Yes.
speak of, because it's the sense of I am not this, I am not that, I am not. And so in your mind, in your consciousness, you're thinking about, or you say, okay, well, I'm not this thought, I'm not this name, I am not this body, I'm not that pain, I am not this job, I'm not that accomplishment, I'm not this label. And then you say, okay, well, if I'm not these things, what am I?
Who am I? That's the question.
That's the question.
Who am I?
And then,
if imagine a scenario for everyone, right? Imagine you slipped, hit your head, and ended up in hospital.
Yeah.
Right? You wake up in the hospital, and the doctor walks in. You don't remember anything. Doctor walks in and says, good news is you're alive. Bad news is you lost your memory completely. It's gone forever. And you're like, no, this can't be true. And he says, check. So now you check and you literally can't remember your own name. And you scan your memory, you can't remember anything. So he says, look, memory's gone. Doctor says, look, your name is Mogu Mogu. I'm like, okay.
Okay.
What would you say? You're born in Mogadishu. It's like, okay, your religion is the religion of the monkeys. There's a special mystical sect of monkeys that live in the mountains in Mogadishu, and that is your religion. Okay, you have 17 children. Yeah. It's like, damn, this story gets interesting. And so you'd be sitting in the hospital room and like, what could you really say? What happened to the you that you were so sure about before that accident? Where did that you go? Where do you really exist? Right? So we get so identified with our sense of self. So in that hospital room, what I would ask everyone is, everything about yourself, or so much of who we are, especially up until a certain age, we have been told. Well, your name is Jamil. This is your religion. This is what you believe. This is how this family system works. This is how you need to be in order to be loved and validated. This is how we act in the world. And so now we are being programmed and conditioned to be a certain pattern, a certain configuration of a human being. We're not even conscious and aware. So similarly, in that hospital room, everything that you've been told by the doctor is what you've been told by the doctor. And so what I would ask people is, if you're sitting in that hospital room, what is the only thing that you could know for sure?
From my experience, I think it would be that you're aware.
Like everything you've been told, well, you're in a hospital and it's in LA. I mean, you've been told you're in LA, right? The only thing you would know for sure from your own direct experience, not what you read, not what Deepak said, not what the Power of Now says, from your own direct experiences, I am aware. I am here. I am, right? Mm-hmm. Everything after I am is a concept, is an idea, is either something you have taken on based on the way you've learned to interpret reality, or something someone has told you. And so if everything that you put after I am is a concept, it's not necessarily the reality, it's not necessarily a fact, it's not necessarily real, it's just what you choose to believe. And what I'm really telling people is, you are not your beliefs, because your beliefs change. There's things that you believed yesterday about yourself that you don't believe today. We believe Santa Claus, when we were 10, but we don't believe Santa Claus when we're 15 and 20. Right. And so the only thing you could know for sure is I am, And so for me, I think when we can peel away the layers of conditioning and start reconnecting to a deeper level of that true, authentic essence of who we are, it transforms how we feel about ourselves. And I think it transforms our motivation, and it transforms how we see life, and it will also transform the goals that you set.
And I want to segue to the goals now, because I think this is a perfect opportunity for the listeners right now that are saying, okay, well, all of this sounds incredibly hard, or cool, but what is it? What for? Right? What's to gain? What is to understand or know when I peel all these layers back, when I strip myself back down to the essence of me? Because here's for me at least, and maybe for the people that are watching, there's this drive to want your life to have meaning, to have purpose, and an expectation almost that if I'm living my drive, if I'm living my purpose, if I'm living why I'm supposed to be here, my dharma, if I'm living that, then as a result, my needs should be met at whatever level they need to be met at. And so it doesn't need to be so damn hard. It doesn't need to be where, I'm literally going to get evicted this week, or I can't, make this payment for my child, or I can't, and all of the things that I think that could be top of mind for people when they're really struggling, right? And they're like, okay, well, I love what Kute's saying. I like this idea that I can become and understand my I amness, but how does that feed me? How does that make me be a better human being and achieve my goals? And is there an intertwining between?
I think there is, I think when you can really connect to your true authentic essence and feel that and connect to that, then the question for me shifts from, I mentioned it earlier, like, what do I want? Because there's many things that we think we want, the goals and drives that are driven by insecurities, that even when we achieve them, we're miserable.
Right.
And there's many things that we are trying to achieve that aren't really authentic to us. They're what our parents want. They're what society wants. So now we lose motivation, and we're not truly motivated to fulfill those goals and dreams because it's not truly an intrinsic motivation. It's an extrinsic, external motivation.
Right.
So I think when you can really get in touch with who am I? What is my truth? Who am I spiritually? But who am I authentically as a human being in this physical package, incarnation? When you can align with that and not compromise that, then from that place, for me, the question becomes, what is it that life is seeking to express through me? What is it that the universe is seeking to express through me? What is it that my soul is seeking to express? What is the deepest gift, most authentic gift that I am here to offer the world? And I think when you can bring your personality, your ego, your planning, your marketing, your strategy, your resources in sync with what is true, in sync with what is real, where you're not trying to live someone else's version for your life, where you're not trying to be Jamil, you're not trying to be Tony Robbins, you're not trying to be someone else. You're really feeling, this is who I am, and you're living in alignment with that. I have found you will, number one, be more motivated because it's true for you, because you've now connected. Number two, you are you're going to be in the flow of your own dharma, the flow of your own truth. And that's when I think synchronicity and life unfolds and magic happens.
Right.
That's
when you live your best version.
That's when the blessings happen. Now, the life that you end up living may not be the life that you had planned with your mind. But from that place of truth, the life you end up living will be the life that you are meant to truly live in this human experience.
And it'll always be so much better than what you could have planned.
We could look at Mandela.
Yeah.
Nelson Mandela, 27
years in prison.
We could say, well, should he have not spent 27 years in prison?
No.
What if he said, no, I'm going to kind of hack the system, only spend 1 year in prison? I guarantee you he would not have developed the consciousness, the soul force. Spending 27 years in prison makes you think and meditate and reflect.
Right.
You have to get to a certain level of consciousness to become the person that is capable of fulfilling the bigness of that vision. So that 27 years in prison was perhaps his, he was being cooked for 27 years so that he could be ripe enough to be served to the world. Had he tried to short circuit that process for him, we probably wouldn't have the Mandela that we know. He was able to come out and in only a few years have an impact that is still being felt. And so I think there's a few reasons I have found why dreams don't manifest. And I think this might connect to something you're saying and what people might be thinking. The first reason is the goal that you're trying to manifest is not in alignment with your soul's highest intention. You're trying to manifest something that is not truly yours. It's your parents, it's your moms, it's societies, it's some you're in comparison with someone on social media. So it's not truly in alignment. So life doesn't necessarily flow. You're out of sync, you're out of alignment with your own nature and flow. A mango is not trying to be a strawberry.
Right.
A strawberry is not trying to be a mango, right? Working in alignment with your nature. So that's number one. Number two, it may not be time yet. Sometimes we just want what we want and we want it right now. But everything has a season and everything has a timing. You plant a seed and you might want to see the harvest now, but it might take 6, 7, 8 months for the harvest to sprout and the flowers to blossom. So we have to learn to cultivate the patience and water the flowers, water the seeds, prepare ourselves so that we can become prepared and ready. Number three, the other reason I found that sometimes dreams don't manifest is you have not learned the lesson where you are with who you're with. And if we are souls and we incarnate into this human experience, life is the university for our soul's evolution. Everything is about growth and learning lessons. And I think everyone and every person is your teacher, and inherent in every situation is an opportunity to learn, grow, and evolve. So what I have found is when we don't learn and grow, when we don't learn the lesson where we are with who we're with, it blocks the access, it blocks the opening to the next level of your life. And so for anyone who might feel stuck, I would invite you to step. What we tend to do in that moment is we tend to force and push harder. But if you push harder with the wrong equation, or with the wrong combination of the lock, it doesn't open.
Right.
So I invite people
You're just going to get more frustrated.
to step back,
Yeah.
right, and do the inner work. Step back and ask yourself, why did my soul attract this situation? Step back and ask yourself, what is this person, this boss, this partner, what are they mirroring to me about myself that I need to see? What is it that I'm unwilling to see in this situation? Because when you can learn the lesson where you are with who you're with, that is the key that unlocks the lock to that next level of manifestation.
So what am I supposed to learn right now? What is in my world right now that I'm not paying attention to that I need to learn so that I can move on?
What is life mirroring to me about myself?
Right.
What is life showing to me about myself? What is life reflecting to me about myself that I need to heal, that I need to let go of, that I need to release, that I need to learn, that I need to embrace, that I need to understand? Because life doesn't necessarily give you what you want or pray about or meditate about. It gives you what you are.
Yeah.
And we tend to attract to us situations and experiences and people that reflect to us or are a mirror manifestation of aspects of ourselves.
Right.
So to me, the process of creating and the process of manifestation is not just the process of getting what you want, although that's nice. It's really a process of life reflecting to you and giving you feedback about your most deeply held beliefs in your inner state of being. And as life reflects to you, the mirror gives you the opportunity as a feedback mechanism to take a look in the mirror and shift yourself.
I have this saying that if you want to know the contents of your head and heart, look at what's happening around you.
Reality doesn't lie.
It does not.
Reality doesn't lie. So if someone says, I want to be wealthy, but they're poor, usually there's something going on inside that actually doesn't want that. So I think when we can use life as the feedback, as you're saying, then we can shift ourselves inside. And when we shift ourselves inside, then life starts shifting and mirroring back to us who we are.
So let's shift inside, because I think that's where it all happens, right? One of the beliefs I hold is that success is an inside job. It happens from the inside out, right? And so if you really want to have success, first, as you had said, you need to be aligned with what is true for you. True. What is yours? What is you?
Yeah.
And then in that process of becoming or understanding and being aligned with what you are, there is going to be opportunities for you to pay attention and grow, and all of those are going to be difficult. They're all it's never like it's not a walk in the park when you're in that place of really doing the inner work.
Yeah.
What have you learned from the 36 plus trips to India, the walking out of, the situation with dad? What have you learned as some of the most effective methods of changing and evolving our internal states?
I'll give you one simple one because I think it's a place to start. I think one of the things that keeps us stuck as human beings, keeps us blocked from experiencing breakthroughs, are all the ways that we lie to ourselves. I think in many ways, for the reasons I shared in terms of the ways we get conditioned, we have learned to lie to ourselves about what we feel and about who we are in order to avoid pain and in order to get love and validation. It's survival. And so in many ways, we stay in relationships that we know are not aligned. We work jobs that we hate. We betray ourselves and say yes when we mean no, and wonder why we feel unhappy inside. And so I would say if anyone really wants to begin the process of shifting their life, there's a process, but I think one of the first places that anyone can begin is looking at telling the truth to yourself. And ask yourself, what lies am I telling myself? Just start there. Like, what lies am I telling myself? What am I pretending to not know? What is it costing me? Because there is no transformation without truth. There is no breakthrough without truth. I think that telling yourself the truth is real spiritual practice. Mm-hmm. Telling yourself the truth is real meditation, is real yoga, is real prayer. So I think if we can start there, it's like, okay, I'm not in love with my wife. Mm-hmm. Scary.
Yeah.
Because we're afraid of the consequence of what will happen if I tell the truth. But not telling the truth is keeping everything in your life stuck. You can't change something by denying where you are right now. And so one thing I would say is take the pressure off of yourself of even having to take action. Because sometimes the fear of the consequence and the consequence of the action that you might take, the ego kicks in and starts playing games of self-protection. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, I'm afraid of the consequence. So, I'm confused. I don't really know the truth. I'm confused. We play this game of confusion, but I think deep down we know the truth. We know. If we're really honest, we know. Like, if everyone can maybe reflect back to a previous relationship where you weren't sure, should I stay, should I go, I'm not sure, and you would talk to your friends about it. The moment you broke up, you're like, I knew that wasn't going to work. I freaking knew. It was a knowing in your gut, something. So there's a part of us that knows. And so I would invite everyone, tell the truth.
And what's the process to do that?
Take the pressure off of yourself of having to take action. So what that might look like is
just be honest with yourself. Don't worry about don't go break up with your wife. But tell yourself the truth.
I'm not in love
with my wife.
You don't have to break up.
Yeah.
But start to feel those feelings. Feel. That will start bringing up certain feelings that might lead to a conversation, that might lead to a breakthrough. It might lead to a therapy, which might lead to a breakthrough. It might lead to therapy, which might lead to a divorce, right? But it would lead to a greater degree of truth. And when you bring yourself into a greater degree of truth, you bring yourself into alignment, and that's when life flows. That's when manifestation happens, when you are in alignment. And so I'm not in love. Feel that. Starts bringing up all sorts of feelings. I hate my job. You don't have to leave your job. You may have responsibilities, but at least you can start being honest with the fact that, you know what, this is not in alignment for me. I'm playing small. I hate this. And maybe now use that time, use that year, use that 2 years, 6 months, whatever it is, use that time to say, I'm going to start preparing myself for my exit. Right? And this way, you're not just stuck in a situation feeling like a victim, doing nothing about your situation because you're in denial, you're not acknowledging where you're at, but you say, I hate my job, this isn't working, I need to move in a different direction, I'm not ready to leave now, but I'm going to take 6 months, study real estate, go to seminars, read books, and prepare myself, and I'm going to work for an hour every day the next 6 months to move in a completely different direction. I think when we can start with the truth, it changes everything. It might start with, you know what? I have an alcohol problem. Just feel that. No judgment, no shame, but just, a lot of times we're like, well, I'm fine. I can drink. I can smoke weed. No problem. No, I have a problem with alcohol. Feel that. That gets you in relationship with the truth. And so if people can start with, what are the lies I'm telling myself? Sit down and list the lies that you're telling yourself. Make a list. Get in touch with it. When you can see it, it makes it real. And then feel the pain that it's costing you. Like, feel it. See, the thing is, many times we know that we're lying to ourselves. We feel it, we know. And we feel a kind of offness. We feel a pain. But to me, what we end up doing is we distract ourselves from the pain. We drink it away. We smoke it away. We work it away. We shop it away. We social media it away. We sex it away. Whatever it is, to not feel that pain, not realizing that, not acknowledging that pain is allowing us to perpetuate the pattern. Pain is a blessing.
Yeah, it's a signal that there's something wrong.
It's feedback. It's feedback. So if you can have a relationship with the pain and simply use the pain as feedback, because when we're lying to ourselves, the pain will manifest as a emotional pain, like I'm feeling frustrated, angry, resentful, upset, unhappy inside, depressed inside, right? Because we're suppressing some deeper truth. It will manifest as a physical ailment, backache, shoulder ache, neck ache. It will manifest as a dis-ease, an ongoing dis-ease in some way. It's like your subconscious is speaking to you, trying to get your attention. You're not really paying attention, so it manifests through the body in some way, right? It might manifest as life stops flowing because you're suppressing truth. Your energy isn't flowing. You're not in alignment, so things stop flowing in life. Or you end up attracting people in your life that reflect to you the feelings that you're not acknowledging. So maybe it's like, why do I keep attracting angry people? Why do I keep attracting depressed people? It's like, maybe there's something in me that I'm not paying attention to, that I'm manifesting people to show me what I'm not telling myself the truth about. So if we can just start with the truth will set you free. And so much of what we pray about, meditate about, medicate about, will dissolve when we start telling ourselves the truth. That's what I found.
I think that's the foundation and the basics of all of it. It feels right to share it now. When I had the beginning of waking up in my early 20s, that's what it was.
Wow.
It was, I had become such a phony, right? To the point where I had blue contact lenses. Oh yeah, a complete fake. From who I thought I was, how I dressed, all the things, it was an absolute plasticized version of me. And over 3 days, all I heard was the truth of me. And it was painful because I had created this character, right? And the character was obviously comfortable for me. I enjoyed it. Right, it gave me my sense of being able to fit in and who I was and how I could interact with people, and even in my own household, because my parents wanted a character. They didn't want me; they wanted the character to be in the house. Right, he's going to become a doctor. Da 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 da. It's like they wanted the character, but they didn't want the kid in that way. Right, and they weren't ready to meet that either. Because again, all of the things, right? It's society, all of the layers, and that voice for 3 days, all it was truth.
Yeah.
All it was truth. And I started to see in art, literature, Shakespeare says, "To thy own self be true." Even all the way to hip hop.
Yeah.
It was one of the deepest messages from Tupac. And his music, right, was about reality, being real with yourself, pulling away all the lies. And it's not about kissing God's butt. This is not what this world is about. It's not what life is about. It's about being you. It's about knowing yourself and coming out and expressing that truth and getting to share that truth with the rest of the world.
For sure.
And I think that's where your wealth comes from. I think that's where your legacy can come from. And that's what echoes around in eternity.
Yeah.
If you can actually tap into that and become that version, that avatar of what you were supposed to be. And then it's time to move on to the next thing. Yeah. So there's a couple of questions I typically ask folks, as we wrap this up. This is probably, well, it's not probably, this has been the best conversation I've ever had. I have to say, this is absolutely fantastic, brother. Like, wow. The education system is interesting. And I think that we lead our children into school from a young age, and school creates so much of what we're trying to unlearn, and it is the foundation of where the lies start. And it gets deeper and deeper and heavier and more layered through post-secondary education, I at least in my experience. Yeah. And you didn't end up going and getting a degree. No. You're an ultra successful person, living there, living his truth, living his reality as it should. What's your thoughts on modern post-secondary education?
I didn't learn anything. I didn't learn anything in school that I think is valuable to me today. So I think so much of the school system programs people to not think, to dumb people down, and to become robots and conditioned humans. And so I think the school system is not set up to really create humans that are free and truly in touch with their true nature. And so in many ways, I think it does us a disservice, because, when we're free, we're powerful. Right. When we're free and when we really know who we are as human beings, as divine beings, you can't be controlled.
Right. You can't go and work at the McDonald's.
You can't just go and punch into a job and yes, sir, no, sir. It's like you become a bit dangerous. And I think so much of governments, media, religion, schools don't want you to be powerful, because if you become powerful, you become dangerous and you become more difficult to control. Right. And so I think...
And you make it harder for them to do their thing, which is, to control. And to take the money and do the things and exist, right?
Exactly. And so, when I was 18, I couldn't wait to leave school. Yeah. When I was, the education system in the UK is, at least back when I grew up, is when you're 16, you do your O-levels. You do 2 more years of A-levels, but at 16, you can legally leave school. So at 16, I was ready to leave the UK, leave school, and come to America. My mother, bless her soul, I love her, she begged me. She said, if there's one thing you do for me in your life is finish your A-levels. So for her, I did 2 years. That was my gift to her. I'm glad I did. But at 18, I was out.
How's your relationship with mom and dad?
My mother passed.
I'm sorry.
My mother passed away. Yeah. Incredible human. I got to spend, she passed away of stomach cancer in 2017, which inspired the book, Magic of Surrender. Wow. And, let me give you a story of my mom. I got to spend a year with her. I'm in LA, she's in London, flew back and forth every month to be with her during her chemo sessions. The only regret I have is not spending more time with my mom. We all think we have time, but the truth is we don't. We don't know when that moment's gonna come. And so I just wish I had spent more time with my mom. So when the moment came, the doctors finally said to us, look, you're gonna die. There's nothing else we can do for you. And here I am holding my mother's hand, just crying. I had not cried in front of my mom since I was like 9, 10. And we're outside of the hospital in London. And I'm crying. And I said, Mom, 2 questions. Mom, are you afraid? The doctor said, you're gonna die. And my mother looks me in the eyes and she says, this little Japanese woman, no, I'm not afraid, because I know who I am. This body is just a temporary vehicle for my soul. The body will die, but I will be guiding you from the other side. And I felt the conviction of her knowing. I mean, it's easy to say this stuff when we're fine, but when you're faced with death, it's another level. And I felt her knowing. And then I asked my mom, and this says everything about my mother. I said, Mom, what can I do for you? I feel like I've been a bad son. I should have been around more. I should have been around for more Christmases. I was so busy trying to be successful that I missed so many moments that I didn't think were important. Having a tea, taking a walk, Christmases, birthdays. What can I do for you in this final months? Because they say you have months to live. It's real. Like, I realized I'm never going to get another voicemail from my mom. My mom's not going to see my children. She's not going to meet my wife. All of these things. And I said, where do you want to go? What can I buy you? My mother looks me in the eyes and she says, there's nothing I want. There's nothing I need. The only thing I want from you and in my life is what God wants for my life. The only, this shit was real. No Instagram, no videos, the only thing I want is what God wants for my life. And in that moment, Jamil, I knew my mother was free. My mother knew the true reality of her being. In that moment, I saw that she wasn't attached to living. She wasn't attached to dying. I mean, she was open to living, but she wasn't attached to either. She was open to the highest unfolding for her soul's journey. And I realized she was surrendered in that moment. She was totally surrendered to the highest intention of life. That's when I really, really, really understood my mother. And that was her teaching to me. That was her blessing to me. That was, for me, her legacy. It's like, wow. That's when I realized that surrender is the password to freedom. That's when I looked at all of the great people throughout history: Jesus, Buddha, Gandhi, Mother Teresa, Bruce Lee, Muhammad Ali. People think, it's for the weak. No, but like Bruce Lee, he's a badass. Muhammad Ali, a badass, right? Supposed to go to Vietnam War. He's like, no, I have a deeper calling. I'm not going to go. And people thought he was crazy. He became an icon. Bruce Lee, you got to flow like water. Like, that was not a weak dude.
No.
What I realized is my mother, anyone that's achieved anything really great, I'm not talking about like a good life, I'm talking about greatness. They all got to the point where they surrendered themselves to life, to God, the divine, the universe, whatever label, I don't care. But they surrendered themselves to the universe, to life. And in that surrender, they transcended the human limitations, the human personal power. And they tapped into another dimension of life, that infinite potential of life. And life was able to use them. Life was able to manifest through them. Life was able to create through them in ways that they could not have imagined on their own. And so that's what my mother inspired in me. It's a deeper desire to say, okay, how can I surrender, not in a religious sense, like how can I surrender myself to being used for the highest unfolding of life? So for me, from that moment of my mother's death, my prayer, my intention has been, God, life, use me. However that looks, And what I have found is when you really surrender, like people have this idea that surrender is like, is weak, is passive, is waving the white flag. Like if I surrender, I'm going to get less. How is this practical? I'm going to get less. But I have found in my lived experience, and I could tell you story after story, I have found that when you surrender, you don't get less, you get more.
Right.
More than you could have planned and imagined. And often, it may not be what you expected, but it's often better than what you expected.
Yeah.
And I think that's the gift of my mother's soul, that I feel her teaching me and pushing me every day.
Pops?
My father died.
Also,
he passed away also.
Did the relationship matter?
It's interesting. He passed away in 2000 and it's 2 years now.
Okay.
2 years. And yeah, my father and I'll bring it full circle. When I was about 21, I was dating this girl, beautiful girl. And she's like, I think you have some anger issue towards your father. And I'm like, this relationship is over. Goodbye. That was it. That was it. We were done. I meet another woman, like, this is my soulmate. This is the one. And she's like, I think you got some anger issues towards your father. Now, this time, I'm like, I'm not going to screw this up. Let me do my inner healing. So at 21, this is what kind of accelerated my trajectory to India, right? At 21, I'm with this beautiful woman. I'm like, I'm going to heal myself because I don't want to lose her. So I get into this men's retreat, doing all this forgiveness around my father. I really got to this place at 21, 22 where I forgave my father for who he was and who he wasn't. I didn't have the perfect father, but I realized I had the perfect father for my soul's journey. And I really got to that place where I was like, thank you for being who you were because you forced me to go on the journey that I'm going on. And within 3 days of truly forgiving him, my father calls me up. 2 years. We hadn't spoken. I'm like, I will never speak to this man because I felt like he wasn't there for me, didn't understand me, didn't see me, felt abandoned by him. And he calls me up and he said, son, I think we need to talk. And that began at 21, 22, the healing journey with my father. So, overall, we got to a nice place, a nice place where I didn't feel we're cool, but we weren't like buddy, because for me, I was in this place of like, it takes two people to have a relationship. He knows where I am. So we were nice. When my mother passed away, I was in grieving. Grieving has a way to break your heart open. And it was as though my heart broke open in my mother's death. But what I realized is my heart didn't break. It broke open to another dimension of loving, a deeper capacity, And in that depth of grief, I spoke to my mom. I spoke to her soul on the other side. And I said, Mom, why did you die first? My dad is 10 years older. I said, why did you die first? I was mad. Like, why did you freaking die? And it was like, she looked at me, metaphorically, she looked at me and she said, I died first to gift you the complete karmic healing with your father. And in that moment, I felt a chill in my being. I knew what I had to do. From that moment of my mother's death, I decided I would call my father every day. My father, we didn't speak for 2 months, 3 months, whatever. We called, but we didn't speak that much. I said, you know what? It doesn't matter who he is. It doesn't matter who he isn't. The fact is, I love him. That's all that matters. He should call me. He is what he is. And he's not going to change. He's old school, born in 1935 on a concrete hut in the middle of a jungle in frickin' Africa. He ain't changing. This is what he is. The fact is, I love him. And that's all that matters. And if I love him, then let me love him. And in that, I decided to call him every day until he dies. So that when he died, I decided I would have no regrets. I would be in peace when the moment came. And I gave up any expectation that he should be different, that he should call me, he should love me. I just dropped it. I'm like, you know what? My father has given me everything. He's given me life, and that is enough. That's it. And so I would call him every day. Hey, Dad. Like going from never calling him to calling him. Hey, Dad, how you doing? Hey, Dad. No profound conversations. I had to give up the idea of who I thought I wanted him to be so that I could receive who he was. Because I wasn't even open to the gift that he had for me. And so I'd call him, hey, Dad, how are you? He was, hey, Dad, I love you. Hey, Dad, you taking your protein? Hey, Dad, you taking your green powder? Hey, just simple conversation. Slowly, there was a healing. My father, who never remembered my birthdays, started calling me for my birthdays, started leaving me voice messages. There was such a healing on a soul level that happened that it was beautiful. Then I met my wife, whole nother story. But then I met my wife, and we were pregnant with our first child. October of 2022, that soul nudging said, go to see your father. I'd been flying back and forth to Ghana since my mother's passing 3 times a year to see my dad. Sit with him in a room just to be with him. I was going to go in December. The nudging said, go in October. Always listen to that nudging.
Yeah.
Don't second guess it. So I sit with my father for 4 days in a room, just sitting, nothing special. And I tell my father, Dad, you're the first person I'm telling, but we're having a baby. You're going to be a grandfather. He said, I had a dream. I had a feeling. And he smiled. I called my wife and I told my father, how was it? I said, I don't think he's going to be around for the son, for the baby. I said, why? I said, I think his karma is done. I think my karma with my father is complete. Within a month, my father had passed. And new life was born. My son was born. And as one life went out, one life came in. And I felt, how was the relationship with my father? I felt that we had completed our mission together in this life.
Wow.
And I feel that, and maybe for people to hear, like if they're wondering, like, can relationships be healed? Can we mend, relationship with parents? I found that me being willing to do the spiritual work, which was, I decided to devote myself to loving this man, regardless. That act, as a spiritual devotion, I feel opened up a pathway of grace that brought in my wife and brought in my son on a spiritual level. So, yeah, I love my father.
That's so great.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
It gave me chills, honestly. What a beautiful way to really have that come full circle for you and your entire family. I mean, him, you, your relationship with your son.
Yeah.
It's going to be a beautiful unfolding for you guys, right?
Amazing.
And you'll learn all the things you wish he had been for you. You can be for your son, and so it gives you that understanding, and it rounds you out, and it makes you whole because you were missing it.
Yeah.
And because you were missing it, you're going to be able to provide it,
For
right?
sure.
And so who this young man turns into is going to be an
special,
incredible thing. He's got so many gifts that he's going to be able to learn
and what I
from.
realized is that so much of the inner work I had done over the 20, 30 years prior, right? When I see my son now, I see that he is the fulfillment of the work I have done. And so for anyone listening, like, I think that the greatest gift you can give your children is to do your inner healing. Because when you do your inner healing and you free yourself from your own patterns, your own addictions, generational karma, generational addictions and patterns, you pass on a generational wealth that isn't stuff. You pass on a generational wealth that is consciousness. And your children are born into a freer, elevated consciousness where they don't have to repeat the unresolved patterns and energies and secrets and stuff that trickle down into the next generation. So for me, like, generational wealth isn't just stuff, although stuff is great. Generational wealth is the consciousness that we pass on to the next generation. And so when I look at my son, I see he has a lightness, like there's a brightness to his being that I'm like, I thank God I did the healing.
Yeah.
I thank God I did. I thank God I went deep into the jungle. I thank God I forgave even though I didn't want to. And so I hope that those listening have the courage to do the inner work, because when you do the inner work, you don't just do it for yourself. You do it for the next generations. You do it for grandchildren and grandchildren, and at a certain point, generations to come will kind of look back and go, oh, Jamil, Kou, that person in my lineage over there freed me from this pattern, freed me from poverty, freed me from addiction, freed me from, whatever it was. It's like, thank you. So I think the soul work, the healing work, the inner work is really the greatest work we can do. And I think life itself is amazing, that life itself is kind of a simulation to do the work. Mm-hmm. To me, that's the purpose of life. This is like the classroom, the gymnasium to do the inner work.
The final question I ask everybody is why are we here? And I feel like you've answered it, but
we are here to evolve.
Yeah.
To me, life, as I was saying, life is kind of a school, a simulation where we incarnate in order to learn, to grow, to evolve. And so I think, why are we here? People are often looking for their purpose in life. I think we all have an individual expression and purpose of how we are meant to express. But the real purpose in life is when you know that you're a soul, then you realize that everything is serving your soul's evolution. Everyone is serving your soul's evolution. Your ex, your partner, the breakup, the person that betrayed you. The only thing that is really going on is your evolution. And your job, your situation, your relationship is really here to serve your awakening. And I think sometimes we forget that and we get distracted by life and all the stuff and making money, and nothing wrong with that. I think we need money in the three-dimensional to navigate. It's great. But the real purpose is, am I evolving? And I think that we often judge success in our culture by what we have. The car we drive. Hey, I like a nice car. You know, the shoes we have. Hey, I like nice shoes. But none of that we take with us at the end of our life.
Right.
I was in Egypt many years ago, and I went to the pyramids and I went to the Cairo Museum, the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, the Cairo Museum. And you see an entire floor of Tutankhamun's gold.
Yeah.
His stuff.
That he was buried with.
He's buried with billions of dollars worth of this stuff. And I was walking around as a young man going, wow, there's a lot of gold stuff here, and he's not here.
Yeah.
He's dead. You don't take any of this stuff with you.
Right.
You will die. I will die. Bill Gates will die. Elon Musk will die. Bob Marley will die. Buddha died. Jesus died. Everyone will die. You don't even take your underpants, your socks, nothing. Your kids. The only thing we take is the evolution of our consciousness. And so for me, why we're here is to wake up. That's why we're here. You know, to remember, to wake up and remember who we really are, what we really are, how powerful we really are. Every freaking pandemic, every freaking situation, all of it is for us to remember you're more powerful than you know. So it's like we incarnate into this three-dimensional realm of limitation, right? This is a realm of limitation. Like you can't just jump off a cliff and fly. There's certain limitations. You kind of have to eat food. There's certain limitations. So we incarnate into the three-dimensional realm of duality and limitation, not to be limited, but through the limitation, the friction of the limitation, to go inside and remember the unlimited nature of our being. And I think that's part of the purpose of life, that it's a simulation, it's a game. Life is a game. It's a game of remembering. We come in and we forget. And so you could say it's a game of remembering who we are through all things. And sometimes it's that breakthrough that helps you remember. Sometimes it's the bankruptcy that helps you remember. Sometimes it's the being betrayed that helps you remember that none of this is who you are, that what you are is so much more than anything in this limited three-dimensional realm. And so we're here to evolve. Beautiful.
Thank you, Kute. Folks, I mean, I have got so much to integrate and metabolize from this conversation. It was, again, super enlightening. And I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to be in your presence, to be able to have asked you these questions, to have learned from you, to have heard your story as you told it. And it was absolutely beautiful. I know that there are going to be people watching this that are going to want to connect with you,
Sure.
work with you, be a part of your world. How do people find you?
A couple of ways. The book, The Magic of Surrender, that's my latest book.
I'm actually going to give 10 copies of that book away. Anybody who is watching this right now, leave a comment and tell us how this affected you. And then we will reach out to you, we'll connect, and I will send you personally a copy of the book. Maybe more than 10 of you. Wow. I want to blow the comments up. I want him to understand and feel just how powerful this was. So leave a comment and we'll get you a copy of that book.
So the book, The Magic of Surrender, Instagram, Kute Blackson, just my name, Kute Blackson. Twice a year I do this sort of deep dive. I would say one of my most transformational things I do is an event in Bali. And so if someone's listening...
When is the next one?
Yeah, the next one is July, and the next one is December the 5th through the 16th.
Awesome.
And so...
I've never been to Bali.
It's
Maybe
amazing.
I'll be there in December.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
You know, if you're someone, you feel that you've been put on the planet for a purpose bigger than yourself, and you're ready to do the work and heal, it is. I've done 22 of these events in Bali, 12 days with me in Bali. Life-changing. You can find out more www.boundlessblissbali.com. boundlessblissbali.com.
Guys, you got to check it out. Brother, incredible. Thank you so much. Like this video, subscribe, leave a comment, read the book, all the things. Love you guys. What did I say? Pretty incredible, right? I mean, you ever have a conversation and at the end of it, you're a different person? Well, you are now, because you heard this one. And I think it's fair to say that all of us were changed from it. And I'm very, very interested in continuing to work with this man. So, hey, maybe you'll join us in Bali together in December. All of the links to all of his stuff is in the description below. And remember what I said, I want to send copies of his books to you. So leave a comment, let him know how this impacted you. And if you haven't already liked this video, like the video, don't be lazy, okay? And subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next one.